Hey there. So, after I did some testing on the hub, it came out that it was the power supply. The hub's actually fine. As long as it gets a clean input voltage, it works great. But it turned out that this little sucker was causing the problems. And so, I measured the output on it, and it was going haywire. It was going all over the place. The voltage was fluctuating, and it was dropping out. And then it was spiking and then dropping out. So it's probably got bad components in it. And it's pretty much sealed. So, and then I purchased it. See how it's glued? So it's going to probably break it if I try to get it apart. And the issue is if I either have to return the whole thing, or people were actually kind enough to, they refunded me the money. So I ended up using that money to purchase another power supply, which was this one. I got white, to match this. And it is a much nicer power supply. First of all, it's got a ground on it. So, it's got your anti-shock on it. It's from the LED wholesalers. This power supply does not get warm, and it's much nicer. And the voltage on it is perfectly clean. And it works perfect. So I've had this thing transferring files for hours and hours, and it's finally stable now. That's the first time in 5 years I've had a USB hub that's powered, that's stable. Amazing. I couldn't believe it. It was actually awesome for once. And I still got this. I don't think I'm ever going to find the part to it. There's some instructional videos that I found on how to do welding, which means I got to buy a welder, I got to buy a mask, I got to buy the welding pins, then I got to buy most of the stuff I can get at the hardware store, the metal stuff, and then you got to weld it together. But I got to have some kind of clamps because this stuff is exacting. You can be off like a millimeter or so; it won't make much of a difference, but it has to be pretty precise because this tub is being spun very fast. So it's not that hard, but it also means you got to buy a grinder. And here's the thing I don't understand about this part right here. This part is sold in every country except America. In America, this part, the spider arm, is delisted for the drum. And according to tech support, they can't sell the spider arm separately. But if I was buying this part for something that I bought in the UK or Canada or Australia or any other place except the United States, I could purchase this part separately. So that blows it out the window. They're lying their asses off. They delisted the part here in this country so that people can't fix it. They want you to buy a whole new unit just for that. Now that is fucking collusion. If that is not the definition of what collusion is, I can't even begin to tell you. It is. I mean, you can take a snapshot of it. That is what collusion is. It's when people work together to increase the profit of a company by being deviously shitheads. This is what the case is. And I was reading this, just reading the website, about tariffs. Solar panels and washing machines were just the start. That's what he says. So, they want to slap tariffs on washing machines, which, here's what's going to happen. This is what I understand about tariffs and how they work. All it's going to do is make the prices go up. And that's it. That's all it's going to do. It's not going to make business opportunity for Americans to compete. It's not going to happen. That's not what it does. What it does is it just causes the price to go up and up and up and up. But it's not level with people's income. They say that under the new tax policy, we're getting about an extra $1 a week. Ooh. There are 4 weeks in a month on average. So we're getting an extra $4 to $5 a month now. Big spenders, let me tell you. Come on, give me some lucky 7. Roll some dice. Yeah. I don't know what to say about that. I mean, it kind of makes me laugh. It does make me laugh a lot. But so anyway, I also was doing research about, because where I live, there's only 2 talk shows. There's the Beeb, or the BBC, which is publicly funded, and it always has their points of view. And it's mostly somewhat liberal, I guess, based on... But here's the thing. I still don't understand what liberalism and conservatism is. Now, I understand what a conservation is. A conservation is this big area that has a huge fence that says, everyone stay out or you will be shot, and there's only a couple of people that are allowed in there, and they run the whole thing because they're conserving it. Now, that is what I understand as conservatism, is where people hoard resources. So, like that insane shopper that buys 18 boxes of oats and they clean the shelves out, that's conservatism because they're conserving oats. But I don't really understand how they use it in politics because they define it differently. So that's my thing, is I was trying to read out what the difference is. I can't say that I am a conservative or a liberal because I find ideas on both sides of the fence a little kooky, you know? A little, what's a nice word to say, out of their minds, kind of insanity. And then here's the thing that's even more confusing, right? There are liberal Republicans, and Abraham Lincoln and his policy of anti-slavery was considered liberally Republican. And it goes on to show you all of the different years, like in 1933, how it was redefined from 1933 to 1945. This whole article, it's huge and has so many citations and references. And it cannot tell me what a liberal is. And it even goes on to say that liberalism doesn't even mean the same thing. It means one thing in American politics versus in Europe. If you say a liberal in Europe, it means something completely different, not the same thing. It's like saying a bus versus a plane. They both are modes of transportation, but they're completely different. They're not the same thing. So again, but then we go here and we go to demograph of American liberals as if the definition isn't confusing enough. Now they're dividing it up as though they know who a liberal is, but yet they can't define who a liberal is. That makes no sense to me. The only word I've ever heard liberal in is liberal arts, liberal colleges, and stuff like that. Yeah, so they may say, I think what they're trying to say liberalism is, at least in the form that it is today, is like healthcare, education, and welfare. Those things. Well, Social Security is welfare. So a conservative would be against Social Security. Well, it doesn't matter. They bankrupt the damn thing anyway. So it's the Titanic. I mean, they robbed it blind. Probably like 20 years ago. When I was a kid, of course, I had no say-so in what they were doing. They just robbed the coffers. There's not a penny left in it. Everything they're putting into it now is basically to keep it afloat. So all of these supposed liberal institutions, like the World Trade Health Organization or whatever it is, those people are so full of shit. And they can sue me if they want for saying it. It's my opinion, but it's the truth. When you look at their websites and you look at the information that they have on food, they're missing like 90% of the information. And the information all comes from 1950. From 1950 to late 1950. And right about 1960 is where most of their information stops. So the whole damn institution was created from 1950 to 1960. And that is it. Our whole health organization was based on that. And it probably started even earlier. I would say it started in 1920. And it was being remade and remade and remade up till about 1950. And then they stamped it and they said, this is official, this is now our health institution. That's the reason why it's so fucked up today. It's because it hasn't changed with the times. Education. Now, how would a liberal view education? I don't understand this, okay? So a conservative would say that we're spending tax dollars on educating people. Okay, well, what happens when you have an influx, when you have 500 million people being imported in your economy and they know absolutely nothing? They have no skills, they have nothing. Then you go to educate them, right? So that they could integrate into society, into the jobs. Well, here's the thing. Here's where people get pissed off. This is where people get angry. Is that people who are naturally born into this country, even though we have a natural right to stay here, the government does absolutely, they do not do diddly squat. They don't even put a dime towards education. And to say that you can get a job from what the drivel, the horse manure that they put out in public schools is absolutely, it's laughable at best. All a public school is there is a funding organization, right? And these are rich people who have, they don't give a fuck about anybody. All they care about is getting their paycheck. They meet up, we make $500,000 and we're going to make some rules for the entire country. And they put down these rules down and they say, we're going to pass it over to this institution, and this institution is going to make a test, you see. And this test is going to determine whether our kids are capable of working in the workforce. So it turns out, right, that our colleges can't even produce kids that go into our own workforce because we're importing all the specialists from all the other foreign countries, foreign nationals who you can go get an education for 1/10 of the price. 1/10, okay? And because it's the same. It was 1950. You could learn about how to make nuclear weapons for $2,000. You could take a course on it in physics. Try going into our institutions today and spending $2,000 and take a physics course. Good luck. Good luck. It's not going to happen. See, America got fucked up by rules and regulations. It's the truth. Whether you like it or not, it's the truth. That's the problem, is people don't want anyone to say that because they call that smearing. You know, you got to stand with us, not against us. You got to inspire. Well, you can't inspire someone when they're surrounded by bullshit because it just becomes lies. It's like everyone's hush, hush, lie, lie. Let's all lie so we don't get killed. And that's really a horrible situation. You know, I'm reminded of people that even in conquered countries in war times, there was always the radio station that was informing people of what was going on. So there was always a voice of truth somewhere, right? We can agree on that. But what's going on here? So education is a bust as far as liberal education goes. Because if you're going to offer education to people to help them integrate in society, then how come it is that you can drive through any rural part of the country and you can see native-born people here that are completely left in the dust? They're just taxed the fuck out of their own land. They're just taxed right out of it. They're not educated, not at all. They're expected to go out and make a living and pay for their education, even though they don't have any say-so whether or not a corporation decides to build a factory inside of their county or inside of their city limits. They don't have any say-so in that. So whether they can make a living or not it's not in their own hands to change. And that is something that most intelligent people, most talk show hosts, most radio hosts never, ever, ever say anything about. Because it's just fucking common sense, it seems, right? But it seems like nobody ever touches on that subject. So, are we awash in conservatism or are we awash in spendingism? What is the difference? Because conservatives cost the same amount as people who are not conservative. And it just, tally up the bill at the end of the day, and it's still billions of dollars. What's the difference anymore? Now all it is it's boilerplate. It's faceplate economics. People wearing a mask, they're supposedly from one side or the other, and all it is to get the money. That's it. It's just running for the money. Running to get the contracts, and then they quickly create all these different corporations to meet legal requirements, and then all these corporations funnel the money down, and they do absolutely nothing, because the guy at the end of the street, at the end of the road, there's nothing. Maybe a couple of pennies fall out of a guy's pocket because there's holes in it, but that's the reality of it. That's what the dream is for people. Now, welfare is a joke. And I'm going to tell you that. I don't understand how they can say that welfare is doing anything good at all. You can show me pictures of, and I've seen stories, I've seen plenty of them, about how there's a family and they would be totally out on the street if it wasn't for welfare. But that's just it. Welfare only works for people who have kids. So you have to be fucking kids, right? You have to be fucking, and you have to be popping out kids every day. And that's the only way that welfare will help you. Otherwise, if you're working your whole life because you're a welder, and all of a sudden they get robotic welders at a workshop, and this actually happened. This is pretty much what bankrupted the vast majority of people in the Bible Belt area, the fucking retard area. The robotic welders do a much better job, and they don't make mistakes, and they work 24 hours a day. So now these people are out on the street, and guess what? They had something that they call forced insurance. So you're forced to pay unemployment insurance. Unemployment insurance. And then unemployment insurance pays you just in case you become unemployed. And the maximum that they pay you is 3 months. And it'll be even less if you fill out any of those forms that the lawyers put out for you. You can trust me that if you get fired, you're out on your ass, and whatever you've saved up and your paltry minimum wage job that's it. You're going to be living in your bus, or with little curtains, and of course they're going to probably throw you in jail because they're going to say that you're loitering, or there's thousands of laws, and they're draconian, and they're horrible. It's fucking horrible. You can put someone away for 20 years just for. Should I even go into it? How bad it is? So, paint a good picture of our country. Well, basically, if you're left behind, you're fucked. And they leave a lot of people behind. That whole shit about never leaving a child behind was complete and utter horseshit. Complete and utter horseshit. I would say that they probably left maybe 50% of the population behind. And the way that it's going now, it's about denialism. So when the economies change, and our factories and everything are supposed to meet that demand, instead what they do is they force tariffs on it. Because how can you compete with slave labor in such and such country where their economy is different, right? They don't have to go through billions of dollars of red tape. So there's truth in it, and that's usually why they can push that through. But if you look at what the effect is, what does the effect actually do? The tariffs are passed on to the individual buyers, not the companies. The companies will always sell at a profit. Their MSRPs are always going to be 100 to 150% profit. Always. There's no exception about that. And so when they sell a product, they're going to make their profit, and they are going to make 100% profit. So when you raise tariffs on the item, all it is passed on to the consumer. Of course, every person and their dog seems to understand that. How does that make it more competitive for people in our own country? I don't know. I couldn't tell you. Is it going to force people to pay 10 times more for something? Oh, we live in America, but if you want to buy an American-made washer, you're going to have to pay 3 times the amount for it. So, my washer costs as much as my car? All it is it's 1, 2, 3, 4 pieces of metal, and an electric motor with a belt, and then a timing circuit. a computerized timing circuit that spins the motor. That's it. It's not complicated. It's not really complicated at all. Matter of fact, I have a washer that was pre-computer era. So it's all solid state, and it's very simple. You flick a switch, the belt turns on. You flick a switch, the belt turns off. So, and that's the reason why it's lasted for so long. Because they didn't think about planned obsolescence when they were making stuff back then. They were actually trying to make things good, instead of making stuff so that it dies to keep their business floating like a fucking turd that won't go down the water. Well, that's the problem I have with American businesses, is that they've been regulated to death. Regulated so much so that now that to even move an inch or change one thing on a factory line, they have to get tons of billions of dollars of approval for anything to change. And that's what's happened, is a stagnation. You want to take a look around at all the cultures, civilizations that have died. And given the difference between drought, crop failures, and food supply, if you take those out of the equation, what happened to all the other civilizations that didn't have food failure? It was an economic failure. That is the second highest reason why all the civilizations just basically walked away. They just basically dried up and walked away. It's because of the economic policy, because people get in power and the power gets hoarded and they make decisions, and they make stupid decisions because of protectionism. And the protectionism ends up fucking the country over. And it just goes downhill, slowly but surely, year by year. And most people don't notice it. It just, people get poorer and poorer and poorer, and then it's all like, everyone's like, fuck this, we're leaving. Because there's a better dream somewhere else. And it starts all over again. But how else can you change it? I don't know what else to say. Dun, dun, dun. I'm never going to get this fixed. By the time I get done fixing this washer, I'm going to have forgotten how I took it apart. So what else is there? Saying the obvious. 22 minutes. Block the appointment of replacement since appellate body. Yeah, it's all legal shit. These people do absolutely nothing. They contribute absolutely nothing to the reality of everyday life of every people. It's just a way for them to scribble something on a piece of paper and say, you have to comply with our rules and therefore you owe me money. It's so full of shit. Everybody is so full of shit. I'm just tired of it. I think everybody else is too. That's why they want someone that actually tells the truth. It's not a smear campaign if people are telling the truth, regardless of the oath that they've taken. It doesn't make any sense to me. If your society is based on truth, then nobody is shocked. Nobody would be shocked. Well, yeah, the Law and Order Party has turned on the Law and Order agencies. Well, because it used to be that when you were part of them, you were exempt. You didn't have to follow all of the crazy-ass rules. And then when they start to have to follow the rules, hell breaks loose. Then it needs to get changed, and there's a big, everyone comes and they all sing We Are the World in front of the camera, and they're like, we have to change these laws because they're destroying families' lives. And it only happens when it hits them in the bank account. I know that's true, and you know that's true, but it seems like that's not really ever portrayed in the media. Dun dun dun. The philosophy of free speech. It would be free speech if you could protect people. If people's opinions could be their opinions when they clock out, and then it should be protected. I've always believed that your opinion should be yours. When you're on the job, but the problem is they say that people that are hired for a company represent that company when they're off work. That's where I got a problem with that. And as long as the laws should have been changed a long time ago so that it could protect people. Because we claim that we protect people's right to religion, and it's not really the case. Just because a company hired someone with a crazy religion, where they kill chickens and look at the livers or some weird-ass shit like that, it doesn't mean that they're just doing it to meet some kind of federal quota. It's pretty much what it boils down to. Man, look at that. Look how blurry it is. This camera has a horrible problem with focusing. Dun, dun, dun. Anyway. There's nothing else to say. Freedom of speech in the United States. American liberals describe themselves as open to change and receptive to new ideas. Well, you have to be. Because if you just regulate or congress, which means the opposite of progress, if you congress something, you put tons of legal jargon and tons of paperwork in the way of businesses that want to jump on the bandwagon and do what the rest of the world is doing, then eventually your country falls into stagnation, which is what's happened here in this country. All of the funding towards the future is basically it's not within our borders, that's for sure. And why is all the companies that started here in this country, they take their money, they go somewhere else, and they create these futuristic societies, but it's never here in this country? You should ask yourself that, because I've been asking myself that for 30 years now, ever since I understood what was going wrong. Why does that happen? Why is it like that? Because that's really where the real answer lies.